Thorin vs. Reddit, episode 6. Usually I alternate between League of Legends and CSGO, but this time I'm doubling up on League of Legends, and we'll just go to CSGO for the next one. So all you Counter-Strike nerds will have to just be a little bit patient and post some more idiotic stuff on Reddit, which should be no problem for you. So, you all live in your ridiculous, delusional fantasy bubbles. You've erected these false idols of stupid theories and idiotic statements, and in comes the barbarian at your fucking gates, ready to smash them down, tear down the idols, show you a new way of life once I've cleansed those illusions from your mind. Thorin vs. Reddit, baby. So, first comment we're going to start with has 35 points, and it says, Faker is the MJ of esports in Korea. He means Michael Jordan. Faker is the MJ of esports in Korea. He gets ads, endorsements, sponsorships, because his personal brand is huge. If he left Korea, you could argue he would make less money in the long run. Marin, or even Imp/Madlife, wouldn't get that opportunity. You can strive to be the best on an NA team. Just because you go to NA doesn't mean you have the drive to be the best. With that logic, anyone not on SKT should just not bother trying to win. Now, this was in a thread about the average yearly salary for pro gamers. Now, that whole first section he said there about how Faker's the MJ of esports. Okay, remember, he said esports there, not even just League of Legends. And that as a result, like Michael Jordan, who still makes hundreds of millions of dollars off endorsements, I think might have even reached like, well, even more than that, because he has equity in Nike. He gets ads, he gets endorsements, he gets sponsorship, and his personal brand is huge. Okay, where's the proof of any of that? Those are some premises you put forwards there. Where's the proof? Where's the stats? Where's the data? Where's any kind of evidence suggesting as much? Is Faker's personal brand huge? It doesn't seem particularly huge in terms of esports even. SK Telecom's brand is huge, and he is the star player of SK Telecom. I don't see a lot of Faker merchandise that he gets a percentage of. I don't see a lot of individual sponsorships that Faker has, that SK Telecom doesn't have. I don't see special endorsements just for Faker. I don't see ads that are just Faker, that the money goes to him through his agent, not through his team. None of that happens as far as I'm aware. I've never seen any proof for it. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if the only money Faker makes in his entire career, yearly, from SK Telecom is his salary, and he never gets anything from endorsements, anything from ads, anything from sponsorships. Now, maybe things have improved based on my knowledge of the Korean scene. Maybe he gets bonuses for that. Maybe he gets a little bonus for streaming. Maybe he gets a little bonus when they do an overall ad. I doubt it on the ad one, by the way. If you know how the Korean teams run them, they own you at that point in time. They own your rights. They use you for ads, just as they do in the West, by the way. Most of those ads, you see those pro gamers in the West appearing, even if it's for like a sponsor, whether they don't get anything for that. They're already getting something from their team in that scenario. So this guy's completely speculated with absolutely no basis, not even any factual basis within the sport, esports, or discipline to suggest this would be the case. For he's just assumed, because Faker is like the best and really big in esports, like Michael Jordan was in basketball, therefore there's an equivalency, so things Michael Jordan had and got must be fake. Yeah, brilliant. Great one, mate. 35 points, remember. People have voted that shit. So this one has 73 points, and it's in a thread where Rich, the owner of H2K, commented on the economic future of the LCS. And this guy says, the circuit system back in Season 2 was terrible. Tournaments only once a month or two, and many of them with poor production quality. The scene had no stability, as teams that couldn't consistently finish in the top 4 would disappear after only a couple of tournaments. Honestly, the people saying we should go back to Season 2 weren't following the scene in Season 2, because if they were, they would realise that the LCS is far superior. Now, first of all, as a small aside, that last thing he did there is one of the things that is one of my number one peeves in terms of people arguing, where he's tried to make he's tried to make his argument, right? He's tried to give reasons, he's tried to give things that could be debated and put forward his claim and then add extra different aspects to it, like this is a reason why I think that is and how I've interpreted the facts. And at the end, he basically ruins the whole attempt at reasonable debate by saying, if you don't agree with him and you don't think LCS is superior, you obviously just didn't watch back then. So, you're just ignorant. You can't possibly have a different opinion. Here's the problem, mate. I did watch back then. I watched a lot back then, and I've gone back and watched since. And I've also watched many other esports games, and I've studied the esports games for 15 years. So first of all, they're not about production quality, and that's drastically unfair. Because first of all, production quality has improved in all esports, including esports that don't have leagues or an LCS system, in the years following Season 2. So that doesn't make any sense to talk about production quality in the past compared to now. Secondly, That whole thing about stability based on stuff like salaries. Guess what? Salaries have massively increased in certain games, almost exponentially, like CSGO and Dota. They've also increased massively in other esports games in the years following Season 2. Yet they don't have LCS. So again, you are assigning something to LCS, which actually is not based on LCS necessarily. Also, people always ignore on this topic that esports itself was getting bigger, as well as League of Legends. League of Legends was getting really, really big and starting to go like almost exponential growth pre-LCS. So what? Where's the proof that if LCS hadn't come along, it would have gone, oh, it's gone so crazy from Season 1, and then Season 2's up here, and it would have just stayed there and never gone anywhere. Whereas LCS took it and went up here, right? So you're saying, oh, it just stayed there. Why? Why wouldn't it have kept increasing more? Why wouldn't there have been higher production values at IEM in the future as more viewers got in and more money got in? Why wouldn't MLGs and all those other tournaments have gotten bigger just like they did in other games and gotten massive? Why would other esports games like CSGO, like Dota 2 have gotten huge in their own way with big salaries? By the way, certain people in CSGO now make more salary than some of the League of Legends players. How did all this happen without an LCS for their games? Don't put forward premises which you haven't really thought through, and especially if you don't have any basis for it. It's just something that you've thought up. And here's the biggest problem. If you're a League of Legends fan, if you're thinking inside the box of League of Legends and then inside the tinier box inside of that of LCS, don't make crazy assumptions before looking into the fact, well, has this ever been done? Has my experiment ever been run elsewhere? Not inside my little bubble. If it has, you've already got your answer. You don't have to state it like it's something we can never know and you're just speculating. We've actually tried these things many times over the years. Okay, this one only has 4 points. But I've got a good point for it. So, it's in a thread about the LPL drawing understanding. You kind of narrowed the margins there by saying analytical writer, because it's about Kelsey Moser, I think. And as not many League of Legends experts write or are too much analytical about it, all I can say is this guy's English is terrible, is that same as Monty, she sometimes ignores some facts and gets immersed too much in her own region. I love the way this guy, he's the only one who's got the profit, the prescience to see everyone else's flaws and the way their perspective works, and he can know what fact inside their mind they encounter, then choose to ignore, lie, disingenuously pretend it doesn't exist to fit their secret evil bias and scheme and the narrative they're grinding out. How interesting this is. I'd love to see someone who doesn't ever ignore facts. I mean, this guy, what, does he not ever ignore facts and get immersed in his region? Apparently not. I mean, this sounds like when you listen to fucking Patriot or Laker fans talk about bias. It's like, Jesus Christ. Have you ever had a look in the mirror, mate? You know how you think, like, the fourth best player of the Patriots is the best at his position? Yeah, that's you. That's you ignoring facts, reality, a massive body of evidence, and just wanting something to be true. That's your bias. I know you don't think so, because you go, well, he's a wicked player and they did win the game. Who gives a fuck? You're biased. It's hilarious how you can see it in other people, but not yourself. You're like a fish that can't tell it's in water. Unreal. This one has 34 points. And it was in a thread that was about Apto and one of his accounts getting unbanned. And people had the classic discussion of what if Apto ever went pro, all the rest of it. And this guy says, 34 points. I kind of don't want him to go pro, though. It's fun to have this super high elo villain that never plays competitive and is a huge what if he goes pro, and even if he becomes, like, let's say top 3 world level, some of the mystique is gone. 29 points. Isn't that basically what Incarnation did? Now, I understand on a small level what this guy means. What he means was Incarnation was incredible in Season 3 in solo queue, and he was very hyped even through Season 4, and then people were like, what if he came along and became a really good mid laner? And it's true. When he did come to LCS, after his initial struggles, he eventually did become, like, let's say top 5 Western mid laner, depending on what period of time we're talking about, in Season 5, Season 6. Yeah, sure, that is sort of what he did in that particular sense. But the problem here is, people always conflate Incarnation and Apto. Here's the difference between the two. Incarnation was very good in Season 3, purely on solo queue, did play other roles, but mainly for mid lane, and mainly playing certain types of champions, such as assassins, such like Fizz. It was quite niche, his very, very good skill set. Some of that stuff naturally wouldn't work in competitive anyway, even if assassins were viable, because of the way in solo queue you play, and there's less teamwork, and you don't have a set team structure, you don't have opposing aspects like a jungler and support who are putting great vision out to control you and be able to allow people to know where you are on the map roaming around. So that's one of the reasons why you already knew he wouldn't be as good in competitive. The reason why Incarnation is different from Apto, and I wrote a whole article on this, so you could probably Google like Thorin Apto, it'll be on Gold Potent somewhere, which is now gamers.com. And basically, the best way to describe it is, Incarnation can play almost every role in League of Legends to the highest level of Korean solo queue, the hardest solo queue in the world, and can literally get fresh accounts into solo queue to a top 50 rankings and get him in the challenger in something like less than a week or something like 8 or 9 days. He can just he can do it again and again and again and again, and he plays all these different roles, and he's even not just considered a really good mid laner. He's phenomenal as a jungler. He can play all these different positions, and his talent level is so good that he doesn't just so Incarnation could wreck some of the EU mids. This guy wrecks most Korean players, and even Faker, it's like back and forth, and that's only mainly when they play mid against each other. So Incarnation is not just an Apto is not an Incarnation. He's like a very good player on solo queue who we're not sure how it would fit in Apto is legitimately, he'll probably never play competitive. We'll probably never find this out. But he's legitimately one of the most talented League of Legends players we've ever encountered, with consistency and with a massive body of work and evidence behind him. It's a very different scenario. Incarnation is a very good player that was a what if. Apto is a phenom. Is someone who's like a Faker, a very rare, like once in a generation type talent. Put it this way, if Apto played competitive and failed, it wouldn't be because he wasn't as good or it didn't apply as much. It'd be because he has some sort of crazy nerve issues. That's the only thing I could see stopping him being a good player. Now, he wouldn't be a god necessarily. We're not sure about that. But I don't think it's good to conflate the two. So this has 19 points. Let's see. This was in a thread about Apto again. And this is people, obviously, they were talking about, like, Faker's the best and whatnot. 19 points. I mean, I'm sure people on the Celtics thought Larry Bird was the best player, but players on the Lakers most likely thought Magic Johnson was the best. And then there was Michael Jordan, and everyone, especially his contemporaries, knew he was the best. It's a classic example of where you've sort of heard something through what I would call like the Wikipedia approach, where someone summarized a general opinion, and you've just taken that as if that was the fact, whereas you don't realize that's the interpretation of a fact, simplified and just distributed to people who are miles away from the facts and the key chain of evidence and details and how they came to those conclusions. And so, as a very layman's approach to basketball, if you don't know much about basketball, saying Michael Jordan is the consensus best player of all time is fine. Problem is when you go further and think, right, well, that means everyone says he's the best. I've heard it a lot. Everyone knows and says Michael Jordan's best. Actually, what's funny is if you know a lot about basketball history, you've seen a lot of interviews, there are a number of really great, all-time, great, I was talking like top 50 all-time, top 10 all-time players who don't say Michael Jordan was the best. And who sometimes think someone else was the best, or think you can't even debate who is specifically the best. And other people had qualities that were equal in a different sense. So, for example, I've seen Kareem Abdul-Jabbar say otherwise. Dr. J has said otherwise. I mean, some people will say Wilt Chamberlain's the best player of all time. I've seen people say Oscar Robertson was the best player of all time. And this is from different eras as well. Sure, people in the latter era, the general consensus is Michael Jordan is, and that's the hype around him. And by the way, he'd be my pick for the number one. But it doesn't mean it's as clear cut as that. Now, this one has 73 points. Let me see. This is a very quick one. 73 points. It was from my the Insight on Esports End of Year Awards. And it says, Thorin picks Kasing as the most improved EU player, but Febiven as the most improved Western player. And then the little smiley of like, and what kind of like, what's your deal with that? I mean, I literally picked Febiven as my most improved EU player. And I mentioned Kasing as a nominee. And this guy later on even admits he didn't actually watch the video. He was just commenting on a comment there. First of all, in that case, don't say Thorin picked that. Say in your comment you said that Thorin picked that. Then you would be absolutely correct. That guy did say it in his comment. Instead, you see someone else incorrectly write what I said, assume I'm an idiot based on what was written there, and then comment on that, and then think later on, well, yeah, it's not my fault. I didn't view the thing. You're the idiot, mate, in both scenarios. This one has 3 points. This one isn't even some like League of Legends shit. It's just one I wanted to read because this is a fantastic story. It shows what some people are like. So this is talking about people who sort of just for almost no good reason just bow to authority, even when it's not necessary and it's not like they're forced to. It said, they are. Acquaintance of mine drove a girl home after a birthday party around 3 a.m. so she wouldn't have to call a cab or walk. On the way, he passed a red light. Remember, 3 a.m. Since the street was empty, he drove her to her house and then drove home by himself, and the next day he had a ticket for passing a red light in his mailbox. He called the girl being angry, assuming that some old lady was at her window in the middle of the night, and reported him. Turns out, she herself, the girl, reported him after he drove her home. Not sure how to feel about this. Now, he also mentioned, I think somewhere else, that he's German. Now, first of all, that's just hilarious, because that is sort of like the stereotype about Germans, especially obviously with the unfortunate past of East Germany, where everyone was like reporting on everyone, and they had this ludicrously bureaucratic, spy-based system, which was a nightmare to live in, almost Kafkaesque. Well, I mean, the idea that someone would do that in a scenario where the road was clear, so you're breaking a law, but it's not one that matters, no one there to even enforce it, and someone who themselves sort of knows this isn't something we need to enforce does it anyway. That's a great example of what bootlickers some people are. I mean, that's like, bootlickers of the world, unite and take over. Like, why do people do that? I mean, I understand the whole psychology of you want someone to control your life. It takes away your responsibilities. You don't have to feel that way. But this is a great example, because you'll see it in League of Legends topics all the time, of where it's like not even necessary that you lick the boots of the guy who's in charge, or say that he has to be right because he's in charge, or if he says so, then we have to do everything there. I mean, have a little self-respect, for fuck's sake. Right, this one has 68 points. Honestly, this is in a thread about Remedia leaving it, RNG, Renegades. Honestly, I'd agree it's a shame if it was anyone else. But after talking to Remy in her AMA, my opinion of her is that she is 100% a huge asshole. So in my opinions, good riddance. That's a totally reasonable reaction, right? After his one interaction with her in a public forum, in text, he can conclude that she is 100% a huge asshole, and thus good riddance. I mean, this comment has 68 points, remember. This has been upvoted like a motherfucker. Now, I realise, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe this was hyperbole. Doesn't really seem like it, though, by the way he continually stated it. He only had to have one interaction, and now he knows she's 100% an asshole and just a terrible person, essentially. And that just shows the sort of people who are on Reddit and how they are supported. This is a thread about Mark Cuban was going to get a League of Legends team. 681 points. And it's a fake dialogue. Cuban. So who is this Michael Jordan of this League of Legends thing? Assistant. That would be Faker. That would probably be Faker, sir. But he is Korean and very loyal to his country and team. Cuban. Here's 10 mil. Now, what's funny about this scenario here is actually this suggests to me that this person doesn't really know who Mark Cuban is. He just knows that he's a guy from basketball, an owner of the Mavericks, who has billions of dollars, is worth billions of dollars, and wants a League of Legends team. Therefore, he assumes, since he has billions and player salaries are like a few 100,000 and transfers maybe like $1 million, he could just spend like 10 million to buy Faker. Couldn't he? Yeah. What's funny is you picked a terrible example for which to do that. And actually, a lot of billionaires would never behave that way. Because what's funny is Mark Cuban is actually famously frugal, almost to a point of weakness in terms of his basketball team, and has actually done a fairly terrible job over his whole time as the owner of the Mavericks in attracting big-name free agents to Dallas as a result. Because what happens is the big-name free agents don't want to go there, no matter how good his meeting is that he sets up and has them come and visit, because they look at the rest of the team and they see that he hasn't got that many other stars elsewhere, and that he's just going to stick with aging Dirk Nowitzki, and that he's not going to necessarily spend for an upgrade on this bench player here. And so even if they're really good, they're like, I'll go elsewhere. I mean, look at the actual few moves that happened over the last few years. So, okay, you got Jason Kidd. That's one of the highest profile signings he made. You got Jason Kidd when the guy was older than God. When all the guy had left, basically, was being able to run a team. It was never going to be some sick player. It was nowhere near an all-star for real anymore, regardless of what fans might have said. He failed to get Dwight Howard, despite the fact Dwight Howard went to the fucking Rockets, a much worse org, much worse team, in the same state, for God's sake. But Dwight Howard went there because they were willing to invest in talent, and they actually seemed like they made a good case to him that he could be the star and they could build around. How come Mark Cuban couldn't manage that? Also, he's failed to get tons of other stars over history. Melo, LeBron. None of these guys wanted to go to his team. He wasn't even on the radar for them. They might have took the meeting, that's about it. What's funny is, as well, there's even instances where he could have just spent a little bit more money, gambled on someone, and potentially been more successful. So famously, Steve Nash, who went on to be the two-time MVP for the Suns a few years later and got them to like a bunch of conference finals, was on the Mavericks with Dirk and had a sick little synergy there. But because he was injury-prone, and admittedly, no one knew he'd stay injury-free for so many years later or could manage it like they could in Phoenix, because famously the Suns' coaching staff is amazing at dealing with, well, I guess they're not coaching staff. The Suns, like, facilities for dealing with injuries are exceptionally good compared to everywhere else somehow. what's funny is that's why he didn't give him a big contract and let him go to the Suns, because that injury made him think, it's better to risk letting him go than to spend the money on this. You know, the majority of NBA franchises, if they have a player who gets injured who's a star player, they just ride it out. I mean, think about what the Portland Trailblazers have done with a couple of players now. Think about what the Bulls have done with Derrick Rose. They just ride it out and they just hope the guy gets better because they've invested so much, and if he does get better, the reward is so much that they take the risk. Mark Cuban famously has not been willing to take these risks. I even saw an interview where he said that he even shopped shrewdly. Like, he'll go on Amazon and buy a year's worth of soap or something so he gets it cheaper. This is not a guy who would ever just blow 10 million like that, especially if it was way more than the market value of the guy. So this comment has 30 points. It's in a thread, also the same thread. So it's going to be a similar scenario. So this guy says, I heard it was one. I can't remember what that is. Oh, one for 1 million, as in people offered Faker 1 million from China. Either way, rumours were that he was definitely offered more than 1 million. SKT pays him pretty well, supposedly, and he's very loyal to his team. 52-point comment. But is he $10 million loyal? 22 points. Probably. Past a certain point, money has diminishing value for most people. That being comfortable living conditions and enough to cover lifetime goals / long-term concerns. Now, this guy at the end gets it. But what's funny is this whole topic just shows the American worldview and how they actually think that everyone else in the world sees the world a similar way to them. Because Americans think that you would do whatever you were asked or demanded of if someone offered you enough money. I mean, as this guy says here, once you get past a certain amount of money, at that point you have to think of things like, what would be comfortable to me? What do I want to do? Where would I be able to have the most success? It isn't just, wait a minute, you offered me a bit more money than that? Oh, well, fuck all that shit then. I'll do everything that doesn't go the way I want it to be. Just because you offered me 2 million more money. First of all, Faker already turned down significantly more than he gets now at SK Telecom, because he thought it would be downside for himself. He wanted to stay with SK Telecom, or has a chance to build World Championship level teams. He wants to stay in Korea, play with Koreans, and he wants to be on the best team. Now, guess what? He's won out in all three regards multiple times now, and was right in that sense. But even if he wasn't, it was the best gamble for him. He certainly gets very good money, but he definitely is nowhere near the millions, and he could have gotten a lot more money going to China. So this has... Both of these comments have 1 point, but they allow me to make an interesting point about how people think about players based on where their team gets in big tournaments. Like, they assign every player on the team some sort of extra status just because their team got far. So when people were talking about double lift, someone asks, serious question, what did he do to be considered so good? And we're talking about, back in season 2 when people say he's one of the best AD carries, at one point the best. This guy replies, the other ADCs weren't as good back then. Woong, the tank ADC, was a world's finalist. Now, he's right. Woong was a tank ADC, famously would build Randuins. But here's the key thing. Woong wasn't the star player of his team as AD carry. So the context is totally off. Doublelift was the best player in his team as AD carry at the time. By that logic, if we're going to do that, well, Woong was a world's finalist. Well, let's do the same logic with a bunch of recent shit, shall we? So Hojin was a world's finalist in Season 5 and one of the only players to win a game of First Get Combat tournament. Still a terrible jungler, of course. Still fucking garbage. So when he get to Europe, he just bombed straight out. Yeah, not surprising, right? I mean, no relevance. So by that logic, the fact that he was the only one to win a game of SKT at that Worlds and made it to the final, that just must show how weak junglers are, right? No, junglers are fantastic. Korn, the mid laner of Royal Club, was a world's finalist in Season 4. Well, he wasn't like one of the top 3-4 mids in the world, so were mids just weak back then? Of course not. Mids were fucking unbelievable in Season 4. Tabe was a world's finalist in Season 3 with Royal Club. He was a terrible support. He was actually really quite shit. His only job was just to make Uzi happy and just do what Uzi said. He was actually quite poor in many senses. Oh, does that show how weak support was in Season 3? Season 3 was fucking Mad Life still in his prime. Mata comes along. Special's still there. We've got Yellow Star switches over. And Rated used to be around. Edward was still a beast at the early season. They had some unreal supports. You can do it for almost every big tournament and every big team if you just find the worst player and use it to characterize everyone. So this is a very unfair way to comment on people, especially because Doublelift wasn't just a player on that team and their team was good. He was the reason CLG was good. He was the best player by far. So this comment has 33 points and it's in a thread about Expeke saying Origin aren't uncoachable. And this is about, I think this was about SOAS. And the guy was just like giving some shit to SOAS. 33 points, remember, because Reddit loves to shit on SOAS for some reason. Because you're all hypocrites, even though you love dog shit NA players who have even more ridiculous opinions. Listening to him post-game on the desk today as well, far out. Quotes, we know what to do in the game. Yeah, that's why you went from semi-finalist Worlds to mid-tier EULCS. He has such a bad attitude. What a ludicrous characterization of SOAS's career. Because all you've done here is say, because the last part was to go from Worlds finalist to during the group stage part of an LCS split, not being the top, being in the middle, like it's because of his attitude that he dropped off. Well, by that logic, his attitude got him to that point, right? I mean, this is a guy who has been back to Worlds every year except Season 2. He's been every fucking year. He's been in the semi-finals twice then. He always overcomes any problems he has in the season. And he is a fucking mercurial talent who it doesn't matter how it seems like he's dropped off and he hasn't adapted to the new meta and he's having problems and he's tilting, always will find ways to come back, come through, find a new champion, being exceptional in his very specific way or with a new crazy pick. What an incredible talent this guy is. And yet people, just because of his personality, because they don't vibe with it, just shit on everything he does and mischaracterize his whole fucking career. And then they get mad when you say like Kiwi Kid's not good because they like the guy as a person. Fucking hell, mate. Same guy again. 18 points. You guys love upvoting this guy. Yeah, you're spot on. Be lazy during the off-season. Show up when it matters. It really rubs me the wrong way. You've got so much talent, don't waste it. Guess what? Some people are like that. You can't pretend we're all people who are just maniacs or super driven, super dedicated. It's like a bullshit myth of North American sports that every player's giving 100% and play the game like it's my last, man. No, you don't. I've seen people take games off all the time. I've seen people fuck around, seen people get angry at themselves and not give up, sacrifice their anger to win in a game and just not be willing to play properly and play stupidly. I mean, the Fnatic teams, the reason why they use the off-season to fuck around in the first part of the split, it's because they had to play like every tournament because they were so successful. You do realise Fnatic in the LCS era, wildly more successful than TSM and all those guys. I know, but TSM were making all the finals. Yeah, so was Fnatic. Fnatic was winning practically all of them. And on top of that, Fnatic used to go to the international tournaments and do well. TSM barely ever did. And you guys are comparing the two. Get out my face. Same guy, 16 points. People love this guy. I agree with you that he has an extremely impressive resume. I mean, the same guy a minute ago was like shitting on him 2 times over. But if you think he has maximised his potential and put in 110%, you are kidding yourself. Who the fuck did ever put in 110% and maximise the potential? What, like 5 players ever? I mean, fuck, this is like some shit where people just listen to the statements of players, then believe the statements and think, this guy does practice 100%. I mean, I know fucking NA players, personally I know NA players, who people think are super dedicated, who just jack off all the time and just waste some time and do whatever they want and are really not, but they know how to present themselves, they've mastered the image, and so they don't have to do the practice. There's what's that famous statement? Give a man a reputation as an early riser and he can sleep till noon. That's you fucking guys. 5 points. Same thread. I love how animated SOAS's reactions are every time he pushes beyond vision control and gets caught. It's like he's always so surprised. Now, I agree with this. This is fantastic. That's something I actually do love. The look on his face, like, because it reminds me of, it's like a very European thing, or I guess like just not a natural North American thing in a sense, because Pau Gasol and Tim Duncan both react like a bit like that every time they ever commit a foul. Like, obviously these guys aren't always fouling. Some of them might be unreal, but they do it every time. Oh, what the? Oh, no! That's like Pau Gasol and Tim Duncan. Pau Gasol's the best because he'll be like, please. Tim Duncan's just like, they do that. These are pro athletes and they do that. So I actually think it's funny when SOAS does that. Okay, this is unreal. So these 2 comments have mad upvotes, but think about what they're implying. 270. This is in a thread about, it was when Rox Tigers played Longzhu. 273 points. Rox Tigers are the best team in the world, hands down. Unbelievable play. Because this is when Rox Tigers just went ham on them. 111 points for this reply. They must be so glad that they aren't going to IEM to lose that title. Now, what's ridiculous about that is, yes, a team that was the Tigers last year were number 1 in Korea and then went to IEM, lost the title, and lost to WE and didn't even make the final. Yes, Continue. Therefore, this year, a team who are called Tigers are doing very well in Korea, so they will go to IEM and they would lose the title there. And I guess, I'll just continue, I guess they will play a Chinese low-level team in the semi-finals, whether there is one or not, and lose them. Why would any of these things happen, though? Because, again, they are both called Tigers, and something happened once, then another thing happened after. Therefore, since the team has the same name, and something again happened similarly, then another thing it must follow will also happen, even though it's totally unconnected. Now, why would that even make any sense? Because remember, the whole thing about Rocks is they improved from those problems. That really taught them a lot, that tournament. And ever since then, were phenomenal in every other tournament. And on top of that, they got in Peanut, who covered the weakness of their jungler. Because remember, Spirit was on that World Elite team and had a pretty big impact on the game. And Kuro got his head panned in by that guy, Shiye, who was a pretty solid mid laner. I mean, at the time, before people knew him. Those two players are totally different because Kuro improved massively, became a lot better, and started being way less of a liability internationally. And then they got in Peanut, who's been going fucking ham and plays totally differently at jungle. So there's actually no reason to assume that would have happened if they'd gone to IEM this time. Yet people use that logic of things in the past all the time, as though, because TSM made every finals of LCS, for example, that you should just assume they will in the next split no matter what. Now, if they will in the next split, it's because part of the reason they made those finals is Reginald's trying to get the roster updated all the time, putting a lot of effort into the coaching side of things. They have some star players. It's not just because they're called TSM that they appear in the next final. It's not like they can sit around like, well, in hammocks, like, well, with TSM, we always make it. Don't worry, we'll just teleport into the final, I'm sure, no doubt. No, that's not the reason why. Not only that, you couldn't use this logic last split, even though people did, because TSM only had one player that was the same as the past TSMs. It changed 4 fucking players. So this has 1,119 points, and it's in a thread about Korma saying that like they had like a huge chance to win the tournament. If TSM wins, I think it's when they said like they had 100% to win against TSM, SK Telecom. If TSM wins, I can see 0% turn into a meme. He doesn't even put like sarcasm or laugh or anything. Now this guy, we've got to harness this guy. He could save the world. He is so imaginative that he can actually imagine a universe in which TSM was going to win against SK Telecom. Someone please hire this guy. Because if he can dream the impossible dream like this, if he can put his imaginative powers, his mind into that sort of a revolutionary state, he can accomplish anything for this world. I mean, just think about that for a second. He doesn't say, like, on the very unlikely circumstance, TSM, he goes, if TSM wins, like, as though it was like a 50-50, so I can see this 0% becoming a meme. I mean, I think he's actually done it. I think he's actually broken my brain. I'm trying to, every time I put it through, it's like Neo in the Matrix. He's become like the virus that's entered my brain that's destroying everything from inside me. Like, I've gone mad. You've done it finally. TSM's going to win. And then TSM shot calling. It'll just be amazing, right? What if the shot calling's amazing? And then what if Bjergsen shits on Fake? He wrecks his head and smashes his face. And what if Hortzer just dominates you because like fuck you and split push? Anything's possible. Oh no, wait a second. Actually, it's not. Actually, things are quite usually within the realm of reality, and you can kind of tell roughly where things are going. And when things are different, even it's usually the same principles that didn't apply in that particular sense or that didn't work for that team. It can usually tell, and as a result, it'd be quite ridiculous to even suggest they'd win, right? So, here we go. This is a pretty good one. This has 8 points. And it says, I can't remember what it's about, though. It's something similar. Oh, he's asking what would happen if TSM won. So he put, Thorin would make a neutral joke about it. Monty would give credit to TSM. Both of them know acting salty wouldn't be fair. Even if SKT plays like GE Tigers did last year. I don't think there would be as much drama to be reaped as expected here. Only people's satisfaction of seeing someone confident and outspoken proven wrong, which would have a fitting irony because that same motivation is the reason they themselves have gotten so much joy out of seeing fanboys' disappointment throughout the years, particularly from TSM or Fnatic. In some ways, the fanboy and anti-fanboy are rather alike. Now, what's great about this is a famous piece of rhetoric that's always applied by religious people to atheists who suggest that atheists believe that there is no God and that is a radical belief in itself. Therefore, they are similar to radical Christians who believe, or people of any faith, who believe crazy shit, and therefore they conflate the two opinions. They are sort of the same, aren't they? Well, not really. In principle, and the way they act and the way that they actually think of the world, entirely different atheists and radical religious people in that particular sense. I mean, for example, you don't really see in general, on a day-to-day level, radical atheists like killing people and doing all crazy shit just on the basis that they don't believe in God in the way that you do by people who interpret their own religious material as I should kill people and then do go and kill people entirely because of that. That doesn't really happen at all. Likewise, so he's conflating the two positions that when a fanboy sees a really crazy upset, an unthinkable one like GE Tigers losing or SK Telecom losing to TSM, that when they then get to laugh at us and go, haha, you were wrong, saying that their massively favoured team would win. That's the same as when we laugh at a team like TSM or Fnatic losing to some super duper mega team who they weren't favoured to win against, and the better team was favoured to, and idiot fans thought they were going to win for no real basis and no reason. And when we laugh at them, that's the same. Well, it's not really, is it? Because as I've just described, we had all this evidence, reasoning. It was actually ludicrous to think that way. Whereas the other scenario, the person didn't even explain why they'd win in that. So actually, you can't conflate the two positions at all. It's not really. In many ways, the fanboy and the anti-fanboy are not at all alike in this situation. You have not in any way actually made your case or given any sort of decent reasoning. So, this has 5 points. This is a good one. Same thread. It would be interesting to see, I love this whole thread, how the people who hate TSM try to twist it into SKT just being bad when they're former world champs. Of course they'd go for the whole, they're 6th place in LCK thing, but that doesn't hold up well comparing to NA teams. Now what I love here is where this guy imagines other people to be dishonest and to disingenuously characterize a team, SK Telecom in this particular sense, one way. Meanwhile, the whole time he is talking about that, he himself dishonestly and disingenuously implies that they are world champions, but without mentioning any context. Because what's the context? Yes, 4 out of the 5 SKT members won the world championship. But the reason why, as a lineup, I would call the team world champions, but I wouldn't call them like the same as the world champions without always adding this context, is because they weren't using the jungler that they had even then. It was using fucking Bengi and not Blanc. So the jungler that famously had the synergy with Faker and did all that stuff and was amazing around the map and could make all those plays, he wasn't even there at the time. Then you got to add in, they didn't have their shot-calling star top laner who helped them win worlds. And as a result, they're using a player Blanc who, before this tournament, hadn't showed any competency at the jungle position and was a massive gamble. And he thinks that if you then suggest that's not the same SK Telecom that won worlds, you're being like dishonest or whatever. Get out my fucking face. You're the dishonest one. You never mentioned any of that extremely important context I just said right now. Oh, just a tiny little thing, by the way. That whole jungle mid synergy, that one SKT, those 2 worlds, I mean, admittedly not as much on the second one, but definitely the first one, you know, was kind of like some legendary shit between those 2 players. You know, the only 2 players to have both won 2 world championships. But don't mention that, though, because, you know, fuck dishonest anti-NA homers, right? Unreal how people can't see their own ridiculous flaws. What I love is when someone's flaws come out in the way they describe someone else's flaws. It says 12 points. It's a great comment. One important thing, in my opinion, I've yet to see people mention is that the Chinese style of playing the game works there because the 2 teams are willing to play like that. But nowadays, we have reached a level of strategy and tactical knowledge in which teams are able to avoid fighting if they feel the need to. Vitality or H2K in Europe are a good example of that. They win slowly but don't let many opportunity to their opponent. In China, they probably never realized it was possible to do that. So to that extent, because no team wanted to play like that. So they never polished that style of play. Absolutely not correct, by the way. There were teams who played that style of play. I mean, for example, famously the old EDG with Nami used to play for the late game almost in certain times. In the end, also there were certain teams who used disengage comps for fuck's sake. In the end, I'm pretty sure it's not that Chinese team don't play the same style that they do in China, but rather that they can't when they are playing against international team. They are trying to find the opportunity to do so, but when the opponent clearly don't want to fight like them, they don't find the targets they usually are able to find, and if they force things too much, they immediately get punished elsewhere on the map, which scare them. I mean, it's always funnier when they have slightly broken English. What's great about this is the way he characterizes all of China like that, and like they don't know how to play, and they play this certain style, but they can't do the opposite. And then he mentions like 2 teams in Europe that in the regular split could do that, could do what he wants, but beyond that had issues even winning and didn't have much success in the playoffs. And what's great is the whole time he's talking about this, teams in both Europe and NA, especially NA, were like throwing at Baron with massive leads where you didn't even need the Baron. Teams were still team fighting when they don't have the team fight comp, and the other team has the team fight comp that's scaling and it's getting later in the game. If you lose this fight, they're going to be in an incredible position for the next team fight. All these massive basic problems of win conditions that he's essentially describing in the Chinese teams, he can't see in these Western teams, and he thinks that Western teams like understand macro play and where to be on the map and when not to fight and when not to go for a Baron. I mean, that didn't bear out in the LCS splits if you go and watch them. Also, as usual, this is someone who doesn't watch a lot. Well, I guess I can't say that, actually. It's ridiculous in as much. I would guess he doesn't watch a lot because he seems to have really characterized all Chinese teams as playing the same style, which I don't really understand. Not every Chinese team is just a team fighting team who skirmishes all the time all over the map. It's like OMG in Season 3 ruined Chinese League of Legends in terms of the perception of the West forever. Because every team then just assumed that every Chinese team played that particular way, which wasn't the case at all. I mean, famously, World Elite never played like that. They never played that way in any way. They used to keep the lane phase going forever if they could. I mean, the whole thing's ridiculous. So, okay, this one has... let me have a look. 44 points. So this is a little chain that was about Febevan and the fact that he used to be a choker. So a guy says he was a known land choker until the one time he didn't choke. And then a guy replies to him, 3 points. Still didn't see him choke once ever since being a pro player. Underperforming does not equal choking. I mean, how convenient. As old Febevan didn't choke in those Challenger Series games, by the way. By the way, he's a pro. He used to get paid. He used to have a salary. He used to be a pro player. I mean, it's so convenient that this guy suggests that he wasn't ever choking. He was just always underperforming. Don't call that choking. I mean, when someone's a fantastic player and they're very skilled and everyone knows this, and then they go into situations where they have some pressure on them and they repeatedly play really badly, I would often suggest that's got something to do with choking. Like the moment got to them, pressure got to them, because that seems more logical than they just aren't good for some unknown reason. I mean, let's assume this guy, maybe this guy's whole opinion comes from the fact that this is how he rationalizes his own life. Like, what do you mean? No, I don't have a problem with premature ejaculation. You know, I just coincidentally happen to always come a little bit too quick with you, love. And but not because I have a problem or anything. Honest, love, honest. Don't call me a premature ejaculator. I don't. No, it's just a coincidence. Now, hopefully one day I will last 2 minutes. So this comment has 24 points. And let me see. This was when I made the comment when NRG Shaq invested into League of Legends that it's very likely he's going to buy Faker, as with the Mark Cuban thing. It really annoys me when Thorin goes into stuff, like talking about how people were saying Shaq was going to buy Faker, like something that is obviously an exaggeration or even a joke. By the way, when I mentioned it at Mark Cuban earlier, they weren't joking then. They weren't joking on the comment I read here. He doesn't know what comment I read. And then does a serious analysis on it. Like, of course not. By the way, this is a guy who uses ellipses all the time. Doesn't ever use other punctuations. So that should probably tell you everything. Like, of course not, ... Anyone who actually thought Shaq would just go and buy Faker isn't worth addressing anyways, ... Classic hypocrisy. I mean, for a start off, he just took one small part of my video, made a whole comment about it. Like, why address it? Well, maybe I was making a precedent of what people will or won't do as huge owners coming in with millions of dollars. Could that be anything to it? Of course not. I was just literally addressing whether Shaq will in fact now go and buy Faker. I mean, people all the time talk about Flame going to TSM when it's never even been something that was on the table. It's never something that was ever likely to happen, but they speculate. Guess why? It's fun to speculate, and in speculating, you can go through the reasons of why would he join? In what circumstances could he? Look at the mechanism of how trades work. That's part of what we were doing here, right? Also, he doesn't like the fact, think about this, that I spent my time talking about it and really annoys him. So what has he done? Taken that little detail and made a huge, a big post out of it and started commenting on it and make a comment thread out of it. Well, do you think that's annoying to other people who have the same exact perspective of you, mate? I mean, surely you're just a hypocrite. Like, what the hell is this? So this has 9 points. And this was where, after a Summoning Insight episode, he puts this. People forget that World Elite took EDG to 5 games and had to get pawned from the hospital to win them the series. And he's suggesting, by the way, that as a result, World Elite was like much better than we're suggesting they were. Okay, so let me just translate what you just said and show how that's a ludicrous statement. So what you're basically telling me is EDG, without their starting mid laner who'd gotten them the number 1 seed, still almost beat World Elite in a best of 5 series, and somehow that shows how good World Elite is. Okay, mate, you can have at that one. You know what? Just leave you to that one. You're doing some great work there. 14 points. This was in a thread about ESPN doing an interview with Piglet. Agreed. Of course, TSM is a great story. This is if they were to do very well. if 5 solos come together under the umbrella, but a world champ with 3 rookies winning the split is a better story. I think this is about TL winning. Is a better story and arguably more impressive to me. Riot need to run with that to promote Liquid in case they perform well in the playoffs. This is a great example of how the West thinks, by the way, because I don't know if this guy is aware, but he's thinking how great a story it would be if 3 rookies were able to win NALCS. Is he aware that Season 3 Worlds was won by 5 rookies? The only one you could even say... the only one you could even say wasn't a rookie is Impact. And even then, in a way, you could say he was a rookie in as much as he was a rookie top laner. But let's say you took one off then. 4 rookies won Worlds and are considered the best team of all time. I mean, it's not like this is something new, mate. And that wouldn't actually be as impressive as that. So this has 9 points. And this was in a thread. It was the Freak versus Monty drama. That's a gravy train. Oh, this is about Monty being the expert in Korea. So this guy says, that's a gravy train that won't last forever. He's a colour caster with solid Korea knowledge who speaks English. Maybe at one point he was a unicorn, but not anymore. Again, what a gross mischaracterization of someone. So he's not just a solid caster, a colour caster with solid Korea knowledge who happens to speak English. He's someone who has watched every big Korean game ever played in League of Legends. So already he's a unicorn right there. Not as simple getting someone talented, so get someone equally as talented as Monty or more and have them catch up. They couldn't. First of all, logistically, there's not enough time to do it. We're talking about thousands of games here, hundreds and hundreds of games to watch. So they couldn't catch up. Therefore, they'd never have the same base of historical knowledge and understanding of this sort of thing. Then this whole notion that just because he has that knowledge, like it's solid knowledge, but you could also get someone else to have that solid knowledge or could work into it. You do realize when you have solid knowledge and then you continually work just as hard as the person coming in to try and replace you, sometimes they can never supersede you because you've got that much of an advantage on them and you're not giving up the advantage by not working less. I mean, people always talk about this with me as well. They go, yeah, he knows a lot of facts and dates and history stuff, but anyone could look that up. Yeah, but you know what, mate? They can't, because when they're on a desk, they can't go, excuse me a second, just pull up my laptop, start searching, what tournament was that, and when's that? People will be going, yeah, they've really got not much time for this segment. I can come up with it on the fly, connect points together, give a whole comprehensive thing that lasts 25 minutes where I break down some current analysis, tie it into some past analysis, give points that go with it, all impromptu from my brain. That's why that's not just a small thing that is like a arbitrary thing. Anyone could just look up the same thing. Yes, anyone with unlimited time and a computer who knew where to look and had enough time and even knew the basics of what to look for maybe could find the same fact, but could they weave it into that sort of a narrative? Could they articulate themselves as well? Could they do it on the fly? Could they do it in an entertaining manner? Could they apply, having watched a game, with then the knowledge and the analysis to be able to talk about it? In this sense, you can see why Monte Cristo is not being superseded anytime soon in Korea. So here's a good one. This has 0 points, but it's just such an idiotic comment. It had to be brought up. Everything Thorin does, this is where the guy did that blame game about me getting all the quarterfinal predictions wrong. Everything Thorin does is to gain attention. Attention is how he makes his money. Why else would he do things? So let's just think about that for a second. It says it all that this guy can't conceive of any other reason someone would do something as a primary motivation than money. I mean, that says more about his perspective than it does about mine. He actually doesn't know my perspective. It also is Western logic that fans, because they themselves think this way, will forgive anyone else anything as long as that person makes more money from it. So if a player's on a winning team and makes, like, let's say 7 million, and he leaves the winning team, even though they could win again, for a team that has 8 million offer, and goes over there, they go, it's more money, and, obviously, I mean, who wouldn't do that? Well, people who want to win, people whose motivation is more than just money, people who think 7 million is comfortable enough and want to stay within a team system and believe that this is the best way to play and it'll be more fulfilling to play that way, and think that and realise that eventually money is all spent and that money going into a house and a car, eventually you're left playing for a shit team again. There's all sorts of reasons as to why it wouldn't be the case. In reality, if you're not an absolute narcissist, or if you're not ridiculously materialistic and don't just only care about material things in life and don't just fucking worship, what is it called, like mammon or whatever the fuck, then money is a side concern. It's what you figure. Money is the thing you figure out and debate once you know what you want to do in life and achieve and are in a position to do it. Who even thinks that way? If you think all I do with my work is I only work when and how I work because it's for money, then you don't know anything about my career, I would speculate. And you definitely don't know about my motivations. I mean, I do tons of things all the time that actually won't get many hits, won't get that much attention, won't get much money. I think it's the thing I want to do at that point in time. Now, the fact that I'm so productive, I was able to do things that also get a lot of attention, get me a lot of money. Well, I've just figured it out better than you, haven't I, mate? So this one is from the Esports Express article where it was like Yellow Star's hacked Gmail, and there's the one where it's an email from Svenskeren where it's saying like, haha, Yellow Star, implying, if you remember, that Svenskeren said things that were taken to be racist about, well, he just acted in a manner that suggested he was being racist in a joking manner or not towards people from Taiwan, as I remember, and just Asians in general. Way so he put his name like Taipei Ching Chong as his name, if you remember. That was why he's banned for 3 games from Season 4 Worlds. So that's the thing. It says, haha, Yellow Star. So this guy, 2,514 points, says, Svenskeren, haha, Yellow Star. And he puts, Jesus, fuck, I love Esports Express. Guy with 426 points replies, holy, ... I didn't catch this the first time around, ... Damn, hilarious. Now, here's the question I have. By the way, depending on the circumstances you're in, like if you're with friends, I actually think that in general, it's certainly okay to make racist jokes. As long as people understand when you make the racist joke that you're not racist and that it is a joke. Like that's probably the basic parameters. But for example, if you're a stand-up comedian, you can definitely do it regardless, because people go to the show and they should know that what you say isn't necessarily what you think, and that what you say is going to be jokes. It's your fucking job. So they've already essentially got that sort of like disclaimer just by appearing on a comedic stage. It's not meant to be some philosophy they're spouting. So the point is, as a general rule, I think it's fine to make racist jokes. My problem here comes the hypocrisy of Reddit and people like this. Because think about this. Why is it okay to make a racist joke, and then why do you guys then not only think it's okay but laugh at it and think it's brilliant and congratulate someone for making a racist joke, when all they did is make the racist joke and assign it to someone else who, by the way, didn't say that, admittedly as a joke. The conceit is that they didn't say that, so that's fine in its own sense, but the hypocrisy of this is that you then think it's funny when it's put through that person's lens. If Esports Express just wrote an article in which they said, and of course, Yellow Star, haha, Yellow Star, like a guy from Asia, haha, Yellow Star, then you'd be like, well, that's how tasteless to make a racist joke. But they do the exact same joke through someone else. Yes, I understand the comedic vehicle of doing so, that this guy had made it, and therefore it's in line, in theory, with the stereotype of that guy. But suddenly, the same joke, essentially, the mechanism of the joke, actually at its core is the same, is now funny and acceptable, yet it wasn't before. This just shows the hypocrisy of people in the modern world, and why I actually think Esports Express are kind of scum, in as much as I know from seeing investigation and some private things people don't know about Esports Express, that some of their writers, the reason they do these articles where they constantly attack people that they portray as racists, and even do this thing of put racist jokes into the mouth of the person that they didn't say and haven't said to make fun of them, is because they themselves think the person is racist and they're trying to punish them, and they think that person is wrong to have made a racist joke, yet they themselves are now creating more racist jokes and putting more racist jokes out in the world in order to try and lampoon that person. So it's hilarious how Esports Express are hypocrites, and the people who laugh at that shit are hypocrites. So this has 10 points. It's about Forgiven leaving H2K. I keep saying I think he's an ass, but I'm downvoted for it every time because he's reformed. No, he's an arrogant asshat, and he always will be. Again, great point, well argued. I mean, all you said there is your interpretation. You never even given any more argumentation for that. How is he an arrogant ass? How does he show himself to repeatedly be one? Why would you say that he is not always going to be one? Why can he never be reformed? You never address any of this stuff. Just shows the mentality. So he was always an arrogant ass just because this guy says so. He always will be an arrogant ass just because this guy says so. He always will be. He always is an arrogant ass right now just because this guy says so. This guy's unwilling to change his mind, and yet he then went, why am I downvoted? Because you're a cretin, mate. It doesn't matter what you say. I think people will downvote you anyway. This comment has 103 points. This was in TSM Legends Season 2 Episode 13 thread, well, the one where they went to Vegas. Obviously, this is where they'd lost. It's kind of amazing to see that, though. Talking about like Doublelift's progression as a human. There's a whole circle joke about that. You would think those who were so upset, being the more level-headed of the bunch, would be the ones consoling Doublelift. Doublelift has really made some significant improvements in his attitude and teamwork, because Doublelift didn't react emotionally initially at the time. Is this real life? Did you guys just discover Doublelift yesterday? Because as someone who's watched Doublelift quite closely, you've seen tons of interviews with him for many years and watched him in many games, this guy reacts to human emotions from other people like he's an alien who just came to Earth and took on a human disguise and is now trying to like observe humans. You're like, oh, what is going there? What is that strange liquid coming out of there? Am I supposed to do something now? Like looking around. I mean, he always, when people react emotionally, will have like a confused expression, like, and then he'll wait a little bit, which causes like an awkward silence, and then he'll try and make a comment or a joke where he talks really fast because he's like nervous, like yeah, it doesn't matter, and then he'll like do an awkward laugh like a second later when he realizes it's awkward. He's like, and then he like waits for the human to respond, like scanning, analyzing, calculating, waiting, now respond. Like the way people talk also about Doublelift in this comment. And the way that whole thread was this massive thing that was so beautiful about his improvement as a human and all the rest of it, blah, blah, blah. It was like listening to a bunch of girls gabbing about their favourite pop star and how they think he's changed and how he's become this and that and the other. Man alive, you guys are ridiculous. 38 points. Same thing. So, same thread rather. The worst part of them panning to everyone but Doublelift and hearing someone cry in the background. Oh, the worst part was them panning to everyone. Of course, everyone felt bad, but we all know, do we, that he was feeling it more than everyone else. His pride, his morals, his whole being was hurt in that moment. His morals, really. But how do you think he morally felt like he'd betrayed himself, or his morals were in some way hurt? What does that even mean? Why did you just say the word? Do you just have a lexicon of words that you don't understand the meaning of, and you just use them randomly, like Mad Libs, like his blank? I'll put pride in there. His blank morals, perhaps. His coincidentally Sholin son. Oh, is that not a word? Sorry. Let me think. What is a real word? His. Let's see. What word should I put in there? I've got his pride. I've got his morals. Damn, I need a word. What should I put as the third word? His synchronicity was hurt in that moment. Why do people just write words? Learn what a fucking word means before you write it, please. 70 points. This was about Monty not taking Riot's offer. He put this: his right to refuse to Riot's offer, but you can hardly blame Riot for choosing to just use their already good caster team. Why can't you blame Riot for that? Why can't you blame Riot for choosing not to have the best Korean expert at their thing, who is famous, by the way, for being fantastic showman on Analyst Desk? Why can't you blame them for that? When we're talking about a mediocre, quite a low amount of money additionally that they needed to offer to get him there. They will only do a majority of it, and then they wouldn't do the last part. Why can't you blame them for that? When they're the ones who limit tournaments, therefore there's only really their tournaments, and then there's only a few of them per year, and then they won't spend a little bit extra to get the best talent. Remember, the old opinion on Riot that people loved Riot for was that these were the guys who were making a lot of money, so they were throwing a lot of money around, and they were willing to take all the costs on themselves. Well, now companies who make way less than Riot can, because it's an industry standard and they can even manage the books based on this, spend much more than Riot to hire casters. So why can't you blame Riot for not being willing to spend the money, not being willing to show a better case as to why they shouldn't, and then having to use inferior casters? I think there's every single one of those reasons suggests you can and should blame Riot. Unreal, isn't it? So here's one where I'll just wreck someone using NBA knowledge. So only has a point. And this guy, it was when I was asking what's the point of the regular season, and he makes this comment where he just ignores almost everything I've said in the fucking video. Says, agree that the best teams usually win in basketball, but in the MLB, for example, the best team rarely actually wins the World Series. Depends on the sport and which sport is better at depicting true talent in a small sample. I'll just point out here, don't know anything about baseball, that in basketball, he's actually not right. Like, here's the thing, I went through and found this shit out for you guys. So here's the last 10 years of the NBA. In 2006, the team with the best regular season record were the Detroit Pistons, and the winner of the NBA were the Miami Heat. 2007, the Dallas Mavericks had the best record. It was won by the Spurs. 2008, Boston won. 2009, Cleveland, the Lakers won. 2010, Cleveland, the Lakers won. 2011, Chicago, the Mavericks won. 2012, Chicago and San Antonio Spurs combined. Miami won. 2013, Miami in both. 2014, San Antonio Spurs in both. 2015, Golden State Warriors in both. So the last 10 years of basketball, only 4 times was the team with the best regular season record the team who won the NBA championship. So 6 times, so 60% of the time in the last 10 years didn't happen. Now let's go to NALCS and EULCS. Let's see if it applies in these games, shall we? Season 3, TSM, both. In NA. Summer, C9 in both. Spring, C9 in both. Summer Season 4, C9, but TSM won. Spring Season 5, TSM in both. Summer Season 5, Team Liquid, CLG won. Season 6 Spring, Immortals, CLG won. So in NALCS, 4 out of the 7 seasons, the team who were the number one in the regular split won overall. So they're 57%. Slightly better than the NBA, but still not amazing. Like, if I was going to say the best team usually wins, I'd be mainly to be talking about like 80%. Like, yeah, usually in the most literal sense. But the way he said it in a flippant manner makes it sound like 80% of the time it's the case. And it's weird outliers that don't win. No. 43% of the time, the team who's the best in the regular split in the NALCS doesn't win. It's the same, by the way, in the ULCS. Because the only times that someone didn't win were Lemon Dog's season, SK in spring of season 4, SK in spring of season 5. Those are the 3 times where the team with the number 1 record didn't win. It's the same scenario, 57%. Okay, so here's a comment that was where people asked what happened to Summoning Insight. And there was a comment that was 5 points, and it said, there's a difference between pointing out mistakes or areas of improvement and just bitching when they don't agree. Lately, it has been more of the latter. In what way has it been more of the latter? I mean, in all of my content, whenever I criticize someone, I also then go on to explain the mechanism of why I'm criticizing them, what I think they've done wrong, what their incorrect philosophy is, what the rationality of the matter is, how I rationally break it down, and then I always go on to say what I think they should have done, what they could do, and what they can do in the future, and what improvements they can make. So this isn't even vaguely factual, and notice he gives no examples. They never do give examples in these scenarios, people, when they talk in mad generalities like that. In the thread where it was reaction to SK Telecom versus G2, 39 points. Yeah, all it took for Jin Air Green Wings to lose, he's talking about when they lost to CLG at IM San Jose last year. All it took for Jin Air Green Wings to lose was playing without any of their good players. It's really simple. This guy gets it. Then a guy comments with 11 points, and so upvoted. He says, it was only one player, Trace. And it's not like Sohwan, the player who replaced him, did badly. He had the best KDA and DPM of the team. Now, that's a very disingenuous way to phrase it, because actually, Jin Air before that tournament had 2 players that didn't play in that tournament. They lost Chaser and GBM. Chaser was considered the best jungler in the world, and GBM was considered one of the best mid laners in the world and the main star of the team. So they actually, for that tournament, had lost their 2 best players. And the players who replaced them have now gone on to be good players, but hadn't actually developed at that point in time. Winged and Kuzan. Not only that, but losing Trace wasn't just losing only one player, and the fact that the other guy had good stats meant it was like fine. They lost the player who, with that later lineup that they took from that tournament onwards, went on to be the star player and one of the best players at his position and the defining factor of Jin Air Green Wings, especially because of his predilection to having great pocket picks, which then meant pick ban was very difficult against Jin Air and they could make very weird comps. So again, very disingenuous way to state it. 61 points, same thread. The gap getting bigger will only result in a loss of interest from every viewers but Koreans fans. Look at how StarCraft has become. First of all, what triggers me is the lack of basis for this premise. Like, okay, where are your stats coming from? We've surely seen Koreans dominate more and more over the years, so where are we seeing the actual basis that fans go up or go down based on that? We should have some numbers, right? We've got all the games out there, all the stats are out there. We just need someone to interpret them. If there is none, then why are you saying this comment? Why are you saying it as a fact? The premise hasn't been established at all. Not only that, you put this part, look how StarCraft has become. StarCraft 2 is a terrible example of that, because a big part of StarCraft 2's problem is they never properly marketed and understood the business model of how to do it in Korea, which would have been free to play in the PC bangs. They never understood how to work with Kesper, so that Kesper took on StarCraft 2 as their league from the very beginning, not 2 years into the game, and then with this weird hybrid league. They never understood the growing size of other games that became phenoms. So as StarCraft 2 started to drum off, coincides almost directly with the growth of League of Legends as a massive game, and Dota 2 getting bigger and having its own massive tournaments, and then CSGO takes over at the very end and probably is the last final killing blow in many respects. They ignore all of these factors and they just look at the fact, Koreans won more, and then the viewers, we haven't even proven this, gone down. By the way, it didn't happen. Viewers are higher in many ways than they were in many of the past years, just that relative to the size of esports, StarCraft 2 isn't as big, even though as a game itself, objectively, it is bigger. They ignored all of these factors, and they just say, the Koreans doing better and not as many Westerners is why StarCraft 2 is dying off and not being as good. Premise doesn't work, and therefore you can't apply it to League of Legends either. 61 points, of course. You guys all agree with this fuck. So, minus 15 points, but this is so stupid it has to be brought up. This was about G2 and the practice issue. How much do they play in a day? 8 hours? Some people shovel shit for longer than that every day for years without vacation just to put some food on the table. Not a good argument in my opinion. Well, yours isn't a good argument, mate, because what exactly is your point? That because some people anywhere in the world at any point in time have the worst possible job and don't get vacations, what? Therefore, G2 should have to as well, or that should be the expectation, or that should be what people have to do, or that if people don't do that, somehow they've betrayed like their morals, or they owe it to the rest of the human race to also have to have as shitty a job as the worst job in the world. Guess what, mate? I don't agree that people should have to shovel shit every day for all that way. So likewise, I don't agree that the best players in this particular sense, who were amazing players, should be overworked and burned out. Don't know, what was your point exactly? The fact that you then even dare add the line, not a good argument in my opinion. You don't know what a good argument is. A good argument could come down like a fucking flying saucer, beam you up, rectally probe you, turn you into the fourth gender. Ooh, I just did that to be like socially justice warrior. Ready. And you'd be like, never seen a good point myself or a good argument. Like you would be that fucking oblivious of it and then go about living your life as the fourth gender, whatever that may be. Maybe one day this video will come back to bite me. Fuck do I care. So this has 1 point and it says, this is unreal. This is about the competitive ruling about Renegades and TDK. And this guy was really mad, basically, that Monty had said that Koreans were the best, even though guess what? They were, and they have overwhelmingly dominant stats at international lands. If you keep believing something, it becomes the truth to a degree. I wouldn't be surprised if most NA pros think they are shit compared to Korean pros. Psychology, just think about it. If someone keeps telling you you are this or that and you believe it, it takes a lot of time to break that mental chain. NA has started breaking it. He thinks that NA breaking it, CLG in particular, is why CLG was able to beat SK Telecom and did well in the group stage of MSI. Now, this is the worst kind of fan theory / logic, because he takes what is an obviously very simplistic point that we can all understand about if you set mental barriers in your mind, it'll be hard to overcome them because you yourself have imposed them and they determine what you think is possible. And he's taken that way too far and devolved into this ludicrous fan theory about what has held NA back for like 4 years of fucking League of Legends competitions. And we're talking about totally different people, some of whom were never here in certain areas. I mean, note that people who do these sorts of theories always keep their theory very abstract and don't give individual cases, because it allows them to never have to address any of the actual things in the video game League of Legends and the surrounding environment of how to train and be the best at it that makes you the best and has thus kept the West from being the best. So it doesn't address the shot calling disparity between the majority of Western teams throughout history and the best Asian teams. It doesn't address the macro understanding disparity in many of the senses between those elite Koreans and those Western teams who threw at the fucking Baron and fought with the bad team fight comp. It doesn't address the poor vision control where Koreans consistently have shown themselves to be much better at warding, knowing where to ward, controlling vision with the warding, being able to use that to exploit where the jungler's going, when you can gank someone. They're so far ahead in this particular respect. I don't remember anyone ever telling NA, you don't ward as well, and that's why they don't ward as well. No, I don't remember that. Also, it just doesn't address whatsoever the poorer practice regimes, the lack of understanding of coaching and adaptation to it over the years. It doesn't address any of the actual things that you could tangibly put down and make good cases for holding a West back. The whole reason the West's been held back apparently is just that Monty told them that Koreans are better, and then they just all said, yes, Monty, whatever you say, and just believed it all. Also, by the way, again, doesn't even fit with history, because remember, in Season 2, teams like TSM thought they were better than the Koreans. CLG thought they were better than the Koreans. They went over there, CLG and Doublelift believed he was better than the Koreans, got rocked out in the round of 8 twice in OGN. Then Azubu Blaze come over to, between those two, Azubu Blaze comes over to the MLG. TSM thinks they're one of the best teams in the world. They think they're amazing. They're the number one NA team. They get the shit pushed in, prison style, utterly fucking wrecked, that they believed they were amazing. Dyrus thought he was a very good player, but then Reaper taught him that he wasn't the best kind of top player and that he could get his fucking dome split open and that sweet, sweet gravy pour out. Jesus Christ, where do people think up these fan theories? You notice the only way these theories can ever work is if you ignore facts and if you refuse to ever put it in real one, start trying to give examples, because then someone could count what you're saying. As long as you keep it up here in fantasy land, yeah, you just make your point and then you don't allow anything else to connect to it, do you? So this has 98 points. It's in the same thread about the competitive ruling on Renegades and TDK. 98 points. To be fair, this is about Mark Cuban coming in again. Rick Fox isn't sitting on $3 billion of net worth. Cuban could literally buy an entire neighborhood of homes for Korean players and their entire families to come to America, and then buy them a car each while he's at it, and it would barely leave a scratch on his net worth. He also has a reputation for being one of the best owners in the NBA, always puts his players first no matter what and doesn't compromise. What's good is, you're right on the last part, he does have a very good reputation putting his players first in terms of salary and giving them lots of things. He has a terrible reputation in terms of getting talent for his teams, and therefore, since your whole thing originally was about him getting all this talent and going above and beyond, spending massive amounts for no good reason, not as great an example, even though you're right in terms of taking care of players. Also, the reason Mark Cuban has $3 billion worth of net worth is that he doesn't waste money like this, in this particular manner, and with no set business plans how he's going to make it back. How he's going to buy a whole... here's the thing, buying this whole neighborhood for the Korean players and buying Faker and all the rest of it, yeah, might be able to win him the NALCS, but how would that then make him the money back ever? How would he ever get a sponsor to cover that kind of sort of cost? How would his team 3 years down the line, still having those players or having to buy even more players, how would that ever turn into him making the money back? The whole reason people like him have that much money is that they don't waste money. They make the most of their money. And when something isn't a good investment, they don't do it, even though they might have actually succeeded in a different sense, like in terms of abstract senses, like winning a league or something. If it wouldn't have made the money and it wouldn't have made sense in the long term of the business model, and maybe only for 1 year you'd have that success and not long term and build into something. That's how he gets there in the first place. It's a very naive way of thinking. And the whole point is, because you didn't have to earn the $3 billion, to you it's like, well, if I just had $3 billion tomorrow, I'd be wasting it. Yeah, that's because you didn't have to earn the $3 billion. That's why you'll never have $3 billion, mate. So, minus 2 points. This is in the thread where I was talking about Riot wrecking Renegades. It's interesting, talking about me, that he brands himself as the esports historian. Actually, given that nickname by someone else, realised it made a lot of sense. Many people told me, yeah, it's a great comment, then adopted it. When this is exactly the opposite of what a historian does. First of all, that wasn't a historical piece. That was an opinion piece, essentially like a video op-ed on something topical. Wasn't attempting to make a historical piece of tech content. Also, the reason why I'm called the esports historian, because I've literally made hundreds, in fact, approaching thousands of pieces of historical content, which, whether you agree with the interpretation of history, were historical pieces of content. If a plumber goes around and fixes 10,000 toilets and literally has been paid to be a plumber for 15 years and has won awards as Plumber of the Year, are you then allowed to go, you brand yourself as a plumber, but when you one time went out to a bar and were dancing there, yeah, it was the exact opposite of what a plumber would do. Yeah, brilliant point, mate. Fucking... You are so fucking intelligent. Why are we all so dumb compared to you, mate? Right, last one. 3 points, same thread. So... he thinks it is bullshit of them to announce to everyone that Renegades only has some days to sell their spot. Shouldn't Renegades and TDK be thankful that the possibility to sell it is even on the table? Really, should Renegades thank Riot for telling them that all their investment and all the things that they've done with their team, that so far we've yet to have any due process, any appeal process, any trial process to prove that they actually have done something wrong to be kicked out of the league, which, by the way, the rules are arbitrarily set by Riot anyway. They're not laws of nature or the laws of the land even. Should we really be thanking Riot that they're even allowed to sell and get some of their money back? What a ludicrous statement. Why should they be thanking them? What? You think it'd be reasonable for Riot to just say, and you know what, we're just taking your teams. And all that money you spent counts for nothing now. We're just stealing your property. We are fucking robber barons. No, I don't think that's reasonable. What kind of little fucking bootlicker is this guy? So Riot can just confiscate all your shit, can they? Just because they set up a rule and then decided to apply it to you without even proving that you actually broke the rule. No, I don't think that's reasonable, actually. You are not reasonable, little bootlicker, eh?